and that you can do some oversight to help them keep them in line. So all city administrations and officials probably need to know, just for, make sure. I don't have any information that says Springville was on their list.
Well, that's good.
But I would just like to admonish everybody to kind of stay within the boundaries and play fair.
Okay,
Okay?
thank you.
Mhm.
Would you mind if I spoke to that just for a minute, just
Sure.
because we're broadcasting this, it's on the record. That auditor alert actually didn't have anything to do with impact fees. It was specifically related to the assessment of fees related to services. So how much we charge for a building permit, for reviewing a building permit particularly. And what is the determination from the city, or the recommendation from the auditor, which the city financial officials, I can't remember their group, has pushed back on pretty heavily, is that, of course, we pay for IT and we pay for admin and we pay for legal when we process a building permit, because we can't process a building permit without computers. We can't process a building permit without having HR to hire and hire our building inspectors and run our benefits system. We can't process a building permit if we don't have a finance department to take the check and do the accounting. So what the auditor actually recommended is that those all be handled through internal service, or I'm missing the word, essentially accounting for them in the fee studies or the fee analyses by having specific accounts that are charged between departments to account for that, where right now we account through that by basically allocating costs on the back end. So there wasn't really a determination that any city had particularly mismanaged or moved money in such a way that they committed, any kind of accounting impropriety, but that the city auditor is making recommendations in that their opinion, some of the allocations the cities were making to costs to other departments were unjustifiable, essentially saying the building permit fee, part of the building permit fee was going to pay for something they didn't feel was specifically related to that. And Springville actually was one of the cities that was sampled. And in response to most likely because they wanted to make it less apparent as to which cities were specifically being targeted by the audit. But we were audited and we did respond. And we're meeting internally, as I'm sure all the cities are, to determine how we'll comply with what we anticipate will be eventual guidance to our third-party auditors that actually do the audit for each of the municipalities later in the year. Mm-hmm. So we're working on that. Again, it isn't related to impact fees. That's all very, very clear as to how those can be used and accounted for, but related to the allocation of costs for providing services across the organization. So we're looking at it and trying to comply with the auditor's guidance.
Thanks for the clarification.
From the home builder's perspective, though, we have had cities in the past moving money about from the impact fees. This one specifically is for, in the annual financial reports, talking about there's a required reporting system. And it said, examples of inappropriate cost allocations we observed include allocating HR, IT, or legal costs to the planning department, but not to other departments that also utilize those services. Allocating costs from enterprise funds. Those funds should charge a hookup or connection fee that does not exceed the reasonable cost of installation or connecting to the utility system, and allocating costs from unrelated functions such as the jail, landfill, or ambulance departments. So I did not know that Springville had been audited, because that information wasn't shared with us. But anyway, it said that they concluded that several entities charged and collected fees that significantly exceeded their fully burdened regulatory costs. Also, the accounting of those costs lacked adequate oversight. And as the Builders Association, that's what we would like. We would like some oversight just to check up and make sure that, I know cities have terrible problems with finances sometimes. And let's just face it, things are a mess right now as far as increases in everything. So our whole thing is to try to keep the impact fees down. And I know that you guys are doing the improvements, where we're just talking about, for your city, and, looking at your, plans and your developments and things. And the impact fees for Parks and Recreation is what we were just discussing. So anyway, these enterprise funds are really important, and they just want to make sure that people keep the money where it's supposed to go. And one of the biggest problems that we've had as we visited the cities is your inspectors. There's a bidding war for inspectors right now, and if you have money in that fund, then you have money to compete for good inspectors or for more inspectors if you should need them. So anyway, that's the point. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to address the commission? Okay, seeing none, do we have a motion?
I move to recommend the amendment to the official
Wait,
zone
no.
map.
Need to close?
Pardon? Oh, I move to close the public hearing.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Public hearing is now closed. Is there any discussion among the commissioners on this item or a motion?
I'll move to recommend amendment. Move to recommend an amendment to the official zoning map on parcels 23-30 dash 0016, 015, 011, 014 from the R115 single-family residential zone to the R18 single-family residential zone located in the area of 1500 West and Center Street. And again, my motion was to recommend approval of that amendment.
Okay,
Seconded.
motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. The next item on our agenda is Springville City seeking an amendment to Springville City Code, Section 11-6-313, specific sign regulations. This item has been continued from the April 26th meeting. Looks like we have Director Yost presenting.
Thank you, Chair and Commission. So the proposed amendments fall into three categories. The first is related to specific regulations for A-frame signs. This revised or amended section, which was actually one of the priority items for the City Council that was way down on the list, but since we were getting into the sign code for some other things, I guess it's kind of like elective surgery. I guess if you're in there, you might as well take care of it. So we decided to take a look at this. What it will permit is one portable A-frame sign per ground level business in all of the commercial sign districts. And it requires the sign to be attended by a responsible party, and that doesn't mean that somebody has to stand out by it all day, but that the sign is within view with somebody in the first floor of the adjacent business. So it's basically attended by the person running the business.
That was a question I had.
That's that's primarily there to prevent opening just a general public forum for people to put signs up in the park strip and leave them unattended. It provides for a maximum size of the sign face and a maximum size of the frame and the full frame stand that the sign is within. And it basically says that it cannot be electronic or otherwise. It has to just be a static physical sign, and that it has to be displayed in front of the building between the two sides of the business. So if you've got a bunch of businesses like on between 2nd and 3rd South here, the sign for the business would need to be located between the sides of the business in front of the product. So if you drew the lines out from the edge of the space, it would need to be in that area on the sidewalk, either in the park strip or in the immediately adjacent to the front of the building, as long as it maintains adequate pedestrian clear space, which is also established in the code. And it also limits the time of the display to the operational hours of the business, so you can't leave it out overnight or put it out ahead of your opening or keep it out after you're closed. Any questions on those?
So they don't have to be attached to the building.
They don't have to be attached to the building, though. They're freestanding A-frame signs.
Would it be a good idea to have somewhere in here any sort of rules on who can place a sign, meaning you have two businesses right next to each other, competing businesses, and one of them puts a negative sign in front of the other, their business, you know, their competing business to harm that business. Do we have anything in here that says, no, you can't be doing that, or you can't take over all the real estate, so this person can't put any
So
sign?
that's where the location of display comes in. You can only display a sign in front of your business.
And no member of the public could come in and just put a sign up because they don't own that business.
Correct. Unless perhaps they were willing to stand by it all day and hold a sign in the park strip, then probably yes. Just like anyone can, a protester can come and hold a sign in the park strip like we've had over the last week. You could go and hold a sign saying Duke's Jewelers messed up my wedding ring in front of Duke's Jewelers. That's not something we can regulate.
That's a free speech zone. Okay.
But if they want to walk away, they have to be part of that business, or at least be inside the building. of
Right,
that
or be
business.
able to,
Take the sign with them.
yeah, or let that business sit, let Duke's, get Duke's permission for them to sit inside the business and watch their sign.
Yeah,
That's gonna happen.
Any other questions on the A-frames?
we're confident with the language on the type of sign that we're not gonna get any changeable signs. We're not gonna get some
Right,
loophole with
So
it.
they're changeable in that
I mean,
you could like replace the sign face. We have a bunch of those we use in the city we got for COVID
Yeah.
that you can slide the sign faces in and out. But yeah, we're confident that they can't be electronic message signs.
they can't be lit up, or
They can't be lit up, no.
Not in any way, shape, or form.
Can they be spot lit? Is that gonna be?
Could somebody put a
something-
sign on put a light on their building to shine on an A-frame sign? Perhaps, but we also
Would
have
to be on the
specific regulations about lighting on buildings that prevents you from like glaring onto adjacent properties or out into the right of way. Most there's requirements on shielding and directionality of lights that may cover that, but no, that's not an eventuality we necessarily considered. Not something I've ever had anybody try to do either.
I didn't see
Trying to
anything
think of
good.
any issues.
But it's always good to think through how you could break the ordinance,
We
because
could
somebody
do
eventually will.
Solar spotlights that are
Yeah,
temporary.
clip little lights onto the top of the sign with a solar panel on them.
Sure. And then that just raises the question of what's the harm? Is there any potential harm to that? I don't think I
They're
see any.
flashing lights, I don't know.
Sounds exciting.
They're not part of the sign. Is that a loophole on thing? If they're not like permanently attached to the sign, would that end up being a loophole?
It may be,
Just trying to think through it.
yeah. Any other
Okay.
questions on the A-frames?
No.
The next is 11.6.113.12, projecting signs. We're renaming these projecting vertical blade or marquee signs. Usually we try to be more concise, but we didn't in this case. As in your staff report, the sign over on the right is a historic sign that was installed, I believe, on the Springville Banking Company about when it was renovated in the 30s or 40s into the current temple-style, modern design. But at some point in the institutional memory of Mayor Packard, they came in to replace the sign face on the sign or do some fixes on the sign, and they were not allowed to do so because it didn't meet the sign ordinance. So they had to replace it with the square box that is up there now. So
That's
this
central bank sign.
that's Central Bank's sign before they were called Central Bank. So that's the front of Central Bank, and you can also see these great bas relief in the terracotta that are covered up by those metal awning things from the 70s, which is sad.
Oh, they're gonna.
So this type of sign, or the sign on the front of the the sign on the front of the Rivoli Theater, would not be permitted today. So there's a lot of signs that, as I mentioned in the staff report, we feel that are characteristic of a traditional downtown and add visual interest and excitement that we just don't permit. And that's actually pretty common across municipalities, that sign restrictions got much more restrictive in the latter part of the 20th century in response to what was viewed as kind of a cluttering of signage in downtowns and a desire to clean them up or somehow reverse kind of the downturn of a lot of urban centers that happened in the latter part of the century. So there's pushes especially in Utah, to change those sign codes so that a lot of the historic neon signs and other kind of landmark signs can continue to be used productively instead of just rotting in place because the owners are too worried to change them in fear that they might have to take them down. And so it's pretty common, and we're addressing it. What this will do is they're already permitted in non-residential sign districts. No, we're changing it. It was originally permitted just like kind of in the downtown area. We don't see a problem in a store out near the freeway putting up one of these signs, or Container Corner putting up a blade sign, or a movie theater somewhere putting up a blade sign like this, or a projecting vertical blade or marquee sign. They have to be located on the front of the business. They can't project any more than 7 feet. The area was previously limited to 25 square feet, which does not get you much in terms of a sign like this. It's a 5-foot square sign, basically like the sign that's currently on Central Bank. So the area will now just be calculated as part of the wall sign area, not having an individual limit. And they have to be at least 10 feet off the ground, vertical clearance from the ground immediately below the sign.
So it will count towards their wall sign?
It'll count towards their wall sign allowance.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Then we're not increasing the wall sign
No,
allowance?
we're not increasing the wall sign allowance.
We're just allowing another type to
Yes.
count towards it? Okay.
Correct. It's a much better way of saying it. Thank you.
Why do we require a permit?
Just make sure it's safe?
Which the permit or the encroachment permit?
Oh, it just says permit required. A sign permit is required along with an encroachment permit when projecting over a public sidewalk.
Yeah, so you need a building permit so that we make sure the sign follows the building code, the electrical code, sign code, to make sure it's properly anchored to the building. It's the same reason we require a permit for any other building work.
Okay.
And the encroachment permit is because they are projecting an element of their building over the air rights of our sidewalk, essentially. So where they don't project over the public right-of-way, they don't need that agreement, so if the building has a setback. But in this case of the Springville Banking Company, the property line is the front of the building, so they would need an agreement with the city, essentially, to hang something over the sidewalk.
Because they're going into the.
Because they're going into the
easement.
right-of-way,
The
correct.
right-of-way.
Okay.
Last is a new category called projecting storefront signs. These are one of my favorite. When I was in Provo, a lot of these got installed. They had actually a little program to help people pay for these. They are really meant for people on foot. They're meant for people on the sidewalk to be able to identify businesses, to increase the visual interest and variety on the sidewalk, and to identify businesses on a human scale, not a vehicular scale. The signs really go back to the idea of like hanging out a shingle, like I mentioned in the staff report, that professionals would do, and that these are essentially your shingles. The number of signs is regulated in this. Essentially, each business having each business fronting on the street or fronting on a private street or pedestrian open space, those type of things, can have a sign. Those signs have to be located within, between the two sidewalls of the business again. They have to have at least 8 feet of ground clearance to the bottom of the sign, so they can be a little lower because they're meant to be kind of in the viewing area of somebody walking on the sidewalk. They are limited in area. I believe we're at, I printed all this out and left it on the printer. I think we're at 15 square feet or 12 square feet. And then 4 feet in each direction is the biggest sign you could have. So you can't go 4x4, but you can go 3x4. So it can either be 4 feet wide, 4 feet tall. There's a maximum projection from the building. And the thickness of the sign cabinet is established. We don't want big, huge, bulky signs out here. They can be lit either internally or by external lights. You can see both of these examples in Provo. Some of them have little lights that are hung on the bracket and point at the sign, and there's a couple signs that are internally illuminated with either push-through letters or some type of neon lighting. And on this one,
Drew, do we have any of those in Springville right now? I can't even think of one.
I don't think we do.
Yeah.
I don't think we do. I'm sure we have historically if I went back and looked at some pictures, but I didn't go walk Main Street, which is what I should have done, and take some pictures if there was one, but I
I
don't.
can't recall. I can't think of.
I mean, we have some of the other category, like the drugstore has, a sign that projects out of it, but none right in this, in line with these.
Yeah, not that particular design.
And you do need a hold harmless agreement, which is essentially an agreement saying, hey, if your sign causes damage or injury, it's not on the city. But, it basically indemnifies and holds harmless the city from anything related to the sign. And we also regulate the message, and your First Amendment ears may perk up and say, you can't regulate the message, but it's regulated in that only on-premise messaging is permitted, so you can't hang out a blade sign advertising for Small Woods roast beef if you're Duke's jewelry. It has to be something related. So you can put your phone number on it, you can put your business on it, you can put custom jewelry since whenever on it, but it has to be just on-premise messaging. And then they can't be electronic or variable message display type of signs. I think that's the end of the list.
Back to the marquee ones.
Yes.
Those obviously can be electronic. I mean, because they're lit and, well, the neon part.
Right, but that's not
It's
a
not
variable
electronic,
message
but not-
system.
But
Yeah.
they're specified they can't be
They can't be
variable
a
message.
digital display.
They can't be a digital display.
Correct.
Can they be the blinking,
Yes.
Vegas strips?
Running lights, racing lights. Wavetronics is installing one of these on one of their new buildings out there for their cafe. It's going to be the Centerline Cafe, and it will all the letters will build CEENT, and then they'll flash on and off. They've got it all designed how they want the letters to light up and turn off, so that is permitted, just like your old theater marquees.
So it can be light
Yes.
active,
Yes.
but not variable
Messages.
message
Yes.
digital
Right.
display.
You can turn your letters on and off or race your light bulbs around your marquee, but you can't have a display up there.
I was just thinking back of the
Can't be
old
like a
Park
TV.
City drive-in sign
Oh, yeah.
that was out there, and I think it had racing lights and bulbs on it. I don't know. That's a long time ago. But that was fun. I miss those old outdoor drive-ins, theaters.
They definitely have the downtown kind of feel.
Yeah.
Of sorts.
Okay, anyway.
Sorry.
Reminisce, sorry.
No, reminiscent is good.
And so these blade or these shingle type signs can't be electronic, but they can have a light component.
Yes, they can be either internally or externally lit, but the lighting has to be directed at the sign and shielded. So you can't turn the light on your facade or blind a passerby with it.
Or the cars.
Correct. Has to be shielded and directed only at the sign.
Any additional questions?
If those are internally lit, can they flash?
It's a good question. I don't think it speaks to that.
I don't know that I've seen that. But it could happen.
I don't know. It just seems like that.
Yeah, with all the ones we installed in Provo, and there's a lot. I've never seen.
Nobody was like, I'm gonna make mine flashy.
Yeah. And I say that because I wrote that code and I pretty much cribbed it for our code because I didn't want to write it again and I thought it was good. So I can say that not just that doesn't happen generally, but that the what you see in Provo is a result of this code.
Okay.
And normally as a planner, I wouldn't pick things up and say they're applicable to somewhere else, but this is one of those things that I think is somewhat transferable.
It's really transferable, yeah. Okay.
Thank you. All right, this item is also a public hearing item for all the members of the public who are here. Do we have a motion to open the public hearing?
I move to open the public hearing.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Public hearing is now open. Councilmember Crandall, if you'd like to come speak to us, you're the only one here, otherwise we're good. Yeah, come on up to the microphone.
Is there, when they're electronic, is there a time that they have to turn off, or no, they can be on all night long?
Like if they have lighting,
Yeah, if they have lighting,
it's not specified.
it's not specified. Is
And
that
there
necessary?
may be general requirements in the sign code that I just don't know off the top of my head.
Okay, so the one at Wavetronics, will it be visible through, from the subdivisions that are kind of next to it, or probably not? 'Cause there's not too- I mean, there's not- they're
I
far-
mean,
they're further
You're
away.
4 or 5 blocks away.
Okay, all right. Okay, all right.
I mean, your freeway lights are going to be more visible than the
Yeah.
signs at Wavetronics.
Okay, all right, just wondering. Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
I suppose it's possible that you'd have, apartments and whatnot in the downtown zone that would
Yeah,
be able to see lights.
yeah, you
But
definitely.
we'd
Right.
also have the street lights on.
But if it's flashing and that kind of thing, you could see it. You could see it. I mean, that's.
I think there's a Seinfeld episode about an annoying sign, so
Yeah, the chicken, something with chicken.
so it's a thing, I'm sure.
There's something about
I mean, that's something that could be contemplated before it comes to councils, whether or not, movement has to stop before.
I move to
11 o'clock.
close the public hearing.
Okay.
Oh, just so we can
Yeah,
discuss
we
it.
can do it. Do it, do it.
Everyone second it?
Did you move to close it?
Yeah.
She did.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right.
So
public hearing is
continue what you were
closed.
saying.
We could ask, let's see, my eye, for staff to look at that before it goes to council as to whether or not there are elements of lighting that maybe you should calm down at nighttime.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, and there may be provisions in the code. I really do not know the sign code thoroughly, because there are some general provisions at the beginning that apply to all the sign types.
I think there are already those provisions, and our city attorney might know.
Yeah,
I've heard that before, that they have to be, if they're a certain brightness or something like that, have to be turned off.
Yeah, we can look at that and include that in
Yeah.
the staff report to council.
yeah, before
That'd be good.
city council, I think that would be a good thing to look at.
This is where it's good to have Laura's quarter century of code knowledge
Yeah.
here with us.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
she always knows. But yeah, to have it, especially if the marquee signs have the ability to flash and have running lights and all that kinds of things, you can see a lot of downtown from, I mean, the neighborhoods, there's a house that's right on the other side of that bank.
Right.
That's right there. And so they can see, our neighborhood can see everything that's going on downtown. I
Right.
mean, we see everything that goes on with the carnival that happens, so it would be nice.
I know there are some about, like, with the variable messaging signs, they have to dim to a certain brightness at a certain time, so
Yeah, as
we'll
long as
look
they
into
will
that.
also apply to the marquee signs.
that's a good question, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other feedback or questions, concerns, discussion from the commission?
So the shingles one can be 4 feet wide. That seems it's very wide.
It's kind of like
It seems very wide. Is that normal? Did
Yeah.
you see any of those?
yes.
That wide in
Yeah,
Provo?
it's kind of like street signs or street like traffic signals. They're a lot bigger than you think they are, or even a basketball hoop, but because it's up there, it just that's very common. That 3 to 4 foot.
So they look smaller.
Yeah, they don't look
because they're
overbearing.
up there.
Yeah,
So it's not going to look crazy.
and most of them are not that big, but some are.
I suspect that one on
That
the flower
flowering
company
company,
is probably,
that one,
probably
yeah.
close to.
Yeah, yeah.
Or the handmade chocolates is probably about 4 feet tall, and that Clausen Farinoli
More wide.
sign is probably
It might
3+ feet
wide,
wide.
okay.
Yeah, it's probably that big, and 4 feet. Yeah.
Okay. Just making sure.
No, it's good. Appreciate you asking all the questions.
Why do we have a 12-foot dinosaur? For the Sinclair station. Any other questions? Or?
No.
No. Okay. Then do we have a motion for this item?
I move to recommend approval of the proposed amendment to Springville City Code, Section 11-6-313, specific sign regulations.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. No other items on our agenda. Is there any information from staff before we conclude?
No, thank you.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Second?